Hello everyone, this is Lauren Flores. This is 5 and 25 Essential News Vocabulary. We'll be starting our stream in about 10 minutes. So if you'd like to grab a snack and find a comfortable seat, and we will be starting shortly. Hello, this is Lauren Flores. This is 5 and 25. We will be starting in about 7 minutes. Hello, this is Lauren Flores. This is 5 and 25. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes. Hello, this is Lauren Flores. This is 5 in 25. We will be on shortly in about 3 minutes. Hello everyone, this is 5 in 25 Essential News Vocabulary. My name is Lauren Flores. I'm a librarian here at San Antonio Public Library. This evening I'm joined by my colleagues, Cindy De Leon. She's going to be doing the presentation of our 5 terms tonight. She'll also be on chat, so if you have any questions, we'll have time to have a discussion and she'll answer any questions that you have. I also have my colleagues Daniel and Priscilla as well. They'll be joining in the conversation. So I'd like to go ahead and start with Cindy's video. I'm going to turn it over to Cindy.
Welcome. My name is Cynthia. This is our 5 in 25 presentation for August. We're going to be talking about 5 terms this time. We'll be talking about the terms attention economy, Posse Comitatus, Karen, systemic racism, and woke. So let's get to our first term, which is attention economy. Well, our first term, attention economy, is one that can help us understand a little bit about how we receive our news and our information these days, and why getting us to pay attention is so important. Well, what is the attention economy? I'm simplifying a little bit, but economics is the study of how scarce resources are allocated. And as you might guess, this word attention economy refers to our attention spans and our mindfulness in today's world. After all, we can only listen to so many podcasts, watch so many YouTube videos, look at so many Facebook posts before we lose our attention. And so in today's world, our attention is very valuable. It's a valuable commodity, and it's treated that way. The more people you can get to pay attention to your post, or the more eyeballs you can get to see your website, the more it's worth. According to one writer, Lexi Kane of the Nielsen Group, digital products are out there competing for users' limited attention span, and the modern economy revolves around the human attention span and how digital products, capture that attention. Well, where does the term attention economy come from? It comes from, according to the Berkeley Economic Review, a economist and Nobel laureate, Herbert Simon, who said that attention was the bottleneck of human thought that limits both what we can perceive in stimulating environments and what we can do. So there's a wealth of information, but a poverty of attention. He suggested also that multitasking is a myth. So how can we use attention economy in a sentence? Well, Forbes talks about the attention economy, and they're saying that we're moving away from a model of the attention economy where we have big, giant firms like Facebook and Google having their digital products out there, all competing for attention. We're moving away from the attention economy to something called the passion economy. Well, what's the passion economy? That's where we use our own interests, our own passions, and we create our own spaces, like our own YouTube videos, our own Twitter accounts, to show people what we're genuinely interested in, and we create things like we talk about writing and cooking and sewing and any other gaming, any other hobbies that we may have, and we create our own passion economy, not the attention economy that the big social media giants would like us to have. So, what do you think of this term, attention economy? What do you think your attention span is worth? How valuable do you think it is? Let us know in the chat. So our next term doesn't deal so much with our attention span, rather it deals with things that are going on in our streets and our communities. And that term is Posse Comitatus. Well, what does that mean? Originally a posse, like you might imagine, like a sheriff's posse, and Posse Comitatus is a group of people that have come together, that have been sort of deputized by the law to enforce the law for a short amount of time. So this lends its name to what's called the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878. And that law prohibits the use of U.S. armed forces to enforce laws within the United States. So we can't send, under this law, the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878, we can't send law enforcement in the form of U.S. troops to enforce laws that we have, to enforce domestic policies. And this law came about because there was a lot of Reconstruction policies in the South, and they were using soldiers to enforce these policies. So then the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 was passed. Well, why is it being used now? It's being used now, it's coming up a lot in the news and conversations because certain politicians are talking about sending troops, U.S. Army, to different cities to quell protests and unrests that have come about recently. As a result of, there's been a lot of protests against the death of George Floyd and others at the hand of police. So some politicians would like us to send the army down there, but that would be in direct violation of the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878. Now, there is a little bit of a way to get around this act. It's been amended several times, 5 times in the 1980s, in relation to the war on drugs. Presidents have sent in people to people have been sent in, troops have been sent in to stop the illicit flow of drugs. And that it can be done if the Posse Comitatus Act is amended. But that's why it's in the news a lot, because sending in troops to the cities, U.S. troops, would be in direct violation of this law. So we're moving from that to another concept, a more personal concept called Karen. Now, I don't, this word's being bandied about a lot, and Karen is a pejorative or insulting term used to describe a stereotypical entitled overbearing woman, and it's commonly used to refer to someone who is using their privilege to get their way in public. For example, they're also using it to say call police on people that they perceive as being threatening, just because they're parallel parking or golfing or something like that. And they also, the word Karen is used because it's a meme. It shows up a lot on social media, where there are posts of videos of women, white women, freaking out about being told to wear a mask at a Trader Joe's, for example. So it's an insult. Now, some people say that it's gone from being a minor sort of funny insult to being a little more barbed, more pointed, more misogynistic as time has gone on. But it's something we've seen in social media posts a lot. There's videos of women throwing all their groceries out of the shopping cart because they've been told to wear a mask and they don't feel like it. That sort of thing. But where does the term Karen come from? Well, there's different theories about that, but some speculate that it comes from a Dane Cook routine. Dane Cook is a comedian, and that it comes from one of his old routines in 2005, 2006, where he talked about a friend nobody liked that was named Karen. Some people think it comes from a character named Karen in Mean Girls, while other people believe that it might come from the name Karen in Goodfellas. But it has a history, this name Karen. It's according to Karen Grigsby Bates on NPR. The lineage of this word comes from a word, it's descended from this term Miss Anne, which was used in the past, like in the antebellum South, to denote white privilege. And Miss Anne referred to sort of like the mistress of the plantation, the owner of the farm, that sort of thing. And that the word Karen is in line with that word. Well, what do you think? Have you heard the name Karen? Is your name Karen? Do you find it vulgar? Let us know. So we've gone from using a term that is about specific racist incidents with one name, but we're going to now talk about something that's society-wide. We're going to talk about a term called systemic racism. Now, this term has been in the news a lot lately. People who are talking about the protests against the murder of George Floyd by white officers have been using it. It's being used in magazines, in news broadcasts, everywhere. And what does systemic racism describe? Well, systemic racism describes a societal pattern that is meant to oppress people of color or people that are minorities of different, to keep people down. It's also systemic racism stems from the legacy of slavery, and it is something that is not just one person. It's bigger than an individual, but it's the whole system that keeps people down. So it would be the health systems, the justice systems. They have systemic problems that keep people of different groups, people of different races or colors from, or ethnic groups, from accessing the power in those systems. So how is it used in a sentence? Well, I saw it used in a sentence on August 3rd in the Senator Express News. Greg Popovich was talking to his players. He was discussing with them the idea of systemic racism and how we can't move forward unless we deal with this racism, that it's the roots in our society. And who developed this term? Well, it's been seen a while in different places, but it was used widely by a sociologist named Joe Fegan, who teaches at Texas A&M. And he used it in his 2013 book, which is called Racist America, Roots, Current Realities, and Future Reparations. And in it, he talks about how the legal recognition of slavery based on race is a cornerstone of a racist social system. And this is how he defines it. He says it's the complex array of anti-black practices that unjustly gain political advantage and power for other groups. And the continuing economic and other resource inequalities along racial lines. In a simpler definition, USA Today defines systemic racism as a reference to the systems in place that create and maintain racial inequality in nearly every facet of life. So, have you used the term systemic racism? Have you seen it used recently? It's also related to the term institutional racism. Now we're going to go look at the last term that we have that's related to that. If you are aware that there is systemic racism, then you're woke. Woke is a slang term denoting the state of being aware that there's of social justice, systemic inequalities, and civil rights issues, and being socially aware in general. It can be used as it's an adjective, and it can be used in a sentence such as "I'm woke, stay woke." And it has a history. It was first seen, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, in 1962 in a New York Times article that said, if you're woke, you dig it. It's also been seen in 1972, according to Merriam-Webster's. The first use was in 1972. And again, according to Webster's, it's used a lot in sentences today, such as you can say that Brad Pitt is the most woke producer in Hollywood, things like that. It also stems from a recording in 2008, and this word was brought back into popularity, some say, by a recording by Erykah Badu in 2008 called Master Teacher. Well, that's all that we have today for our 5 and 25. Stay tuned until next time. We'll have even more terms. And if you have any questions, we have a website that you can go to, and it's www.mysapl.org, and there's a little link that's called Ask a Librarian. You can ask a question there, anything about vocabulary or anything else, and we can help you answer these questions. So that's my 5 in 25 presentation for today. We'll see you next time.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much, Cindy. And I see that we have several different questions in chat. So I'm going to give Cindy a moment so that she can address those questions. The first one is, why misogynistic, from Vicky. And the next question is from Nick. It's, give me an example of systemic racism. So I'm also going to invite our moderators, Priscilla and Daniel, if they'd like to weigh in on these questions as well. So I'm going to open up the room as it is to questions and discussion. And I'm waiting a second just for Priscilla and Daniel if they want to jump in. So it sounds like they might be waiting for a moment. So I'll go ahead and start in with my question. It may be that Cindy might be answering, though it looks like Priscilla's got a link that she's just posted. I think in response to Vicky's question about Karen possibly being misogynistic, I think at times there may be a bit of a mean-spiritedness that people tend to detect with that type of criticism. Though I do agree with Cindy when she talks about the history of Karen being related to some of the earlier antecedents to talk about a white woman using her privilege to uphold white supremacy and or to uphold norms. And so that would be things like she mentioned Miss Anne. And I'm looking to see if Cindy is sending a message. I'm going to check really quickly. She is actually present in the chat. She's not able to speak by voice. So let me check and see if she's got some more commentary for us. So Cindy's responding that misogynistic in her humble opinion because it targets specific women and makes the targets personal and mean when it's really part of a larger problem. So Daniel, or actually it looks like it's from Cindy, she's mentioning some examples of systemic racism. So mass incarceration would be one, maybe also unequal access to healthcare as well. And I'm going to check and see if we have any more responses in chat. And I'd like to thank everyone, by the way, for coming. I hope you're enjoying the stream. This is always very interesting for me. I always learn so much, especially with the wonderful presentation that Cindy has done for us. It looks like Priscilla has posted a link to the guide. So let me see if I can show y'all that really quickly. Oh, it sounds like I've got somebody speaking. Say again. So Daniel's responding, some other examples of systemic racism would be unequal education opportunities and assessment. And I'm going to take a second. I thought I heard someone beginning to respond.
Hey everyone, it's Priscilla. As far as mass incarceration, I'm not an expert on systemic racism. I only go off of what I see in today's world and society. Just having to do with the amount of incarcerations between races. What we see in the news, in today's world, people getting arrested for lack of better words, rapes, murders. It's very unequal. People getting arrested for, again, for lack of better words, for drug possessions. Sometimes we see for drug possessions years and years of incarceration versus, rape or murder, 10 years, 15 years, out on parole early. It's very unfair.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. That's really, really helpful. I agree. And actually, it looks like there's a couple of other comments. I'm going to jump back to the chat really quickly. So it's interesting because Cindy brings up also voter suppression, as a part of systemic racism and oppression, which I think is really fascinating because that is a issue that is very, very of the moment. I'm going to also check the chat in this stream. And I had a quick question for everyone. So does anyone have any other questions? It looks like we have about 3 minutes left in our stream. And so I wanted to be sure to include everyone in the discussion. Cindy so kindly showed us how to get to the library's Ask site if anybody has any questions that they think of later after the stream and they'd like to ask library staff. So I will put the link on there. Let me do that really quickly. So there's a link where you can go and ask a question. And I'm going to check and see if we have any other comments. I was wondering if Priscilla, if you'd like to add anything, or perhaps Daniel.
I see that Vicky posted that she didn't know about some of these terms, and I definitely agree. I definitely hadn't heard of attention economy. There were great quotes within the video. And Posse Comitatus, that was also a great thing to learn about.
I agree. There's just a lot of things that also, we see on the news, and sometimes it's really hard to get the meaning just from the context, especially when the person that's either tweeting or speaking, because sometimes, they might have an agenda or maybe they have a distinct viewpoint, and it's really good to get the definition of all these terms so that way we can understand a little bit better. And of course, I'm sure some of these terms are going to come up as we go along, especially because today, of course, Joe Biden announced his pick for vice president. So that's going to be really, really interesting. It looks like we have about a minute for our stream. So I wanted to check in and see if anyone had any last questions or comments. So I don't see any yet. I'm going to check the stream chat, and I don't see any questions so far. I just wanted to thank again our presenter, Cindy. That was a wonderful presentation that you did. I also want to thank all the folks that are here attending the stream. We really appreciate you coming. And I'd also really like to thank our moderators, and that would be Daniel and Priscilla. And actually, it looks like Daniel posted some ideas about systemic racism, which looks great. I'm looking forward to looking at that link as soon as we go off stream. Oh, thank you so much, Vicki. I'm glad that you found it interesting. So I want to wish everyone a wonderful evening. Stay safe and take care, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for attending.